Kia ora, welcome and good morning. Thank you for checking back into another session. I am going to catch you up real quick. So on the last stream on Tuesday, 2 days ago, I added this page to my portfolio, and I want to take the CV that I created as a PDF and move it over to the web so it's easily accessible there as well and not hidden in some document somewhere. And we're actually pretty close to what I want the final result to look like. No, don't do this to me, Mac. There we go. This is what I have on the web right now. We see some information about me, some meta information like contact details, some text about what it is that I do, a selection of 3 projects that I did, some other public projects that you can look at that are linked here as well, and some writing that I did off-site. Of course, you can always check my writing, my articles on here, but there's also a guest post that I did on Smashing Magazine that they published last year. And it is very close to what I want it to look like. If we look at this again, this is the PDF as I had it designed. And we see almost everything is there. I have this box over here. It's missing the 3 links to the 3 websites, to the 3 platforms. That is fine. I have this selection over here of these projects. And I even have the tags. Here it says TypeScript, React, GraphQL styled components. And we see I have those over here, TypeScript, React.js, GraphQL styled components for all 3 of them. Since we looked at this, I've added the last missing icons. So I have the one for Jira here now and Webpack styled components. Those were missing last time. I think they're on here now. There are a few things that are missing. Primarily this section on the bottom left here, the skills section, where I give you a rough overview. So these lists here are what I did worked with on these projects, but this is the general, this is the stack. I say here the stack I'm most proficient with, the stuff that I use most often. And we still need to add that for one, and then I might add these profiles here. But more importantly and more interestingly, I want this to work on small screens. So if I took this now and I looked at this on an iPhone SE, it would not work at all. I would have all this, well, this is going to be filled in a second. I have this scrolling horizontally, which is not a good experience, and it doesn't make good use of the space. I have this left column here. You see if I resize, always stuck to the exact same width, and there's more we can do with all of that space. Before we look into that, I first want to add the skills section, so we have something to move around. This right now is a flex layout, a 2-dimensional layout, and we'll make this more interesting in a bit. So looking at the code here, I have a header section. This is the header section up here, and then I have an unordered list. This is the unordered list. Everything in here is the address, the phone number, website, and email. And I want to list my skills under here. So add another div. And I created the CV header component for that. It had a title, which we are going to call skills, and a description. And I don't have to type that out. I can copy it from here because that is the description I want to show here. And that gives us this. Skills is just attached to this. It's not so on the PDF. This is aligned with the bottom of the document. If we get these guides back, these are ending at the same spot. So overall, the document looks a bit more whole, a little more orderly. And I'd rather have this gap here than have it under the skills. I like how it closes at the same depth. Now I want to add these sections here first with these skills that I list, and then we can see how we can reorganize them. Might not have to do all of them because most of that will be repeated. So what do we have? We have actually sections, I think is fair to call them. So a section tag, and in here I have added last time the CV. Was it the skill? Was it the item? The CV tag. Okay, the CV tag. CV tag, and the title of the first thing that I do, that is JavaScript. So I have JavaScript, TypeScript, React.js, JavaScript, And the way we did it last time was, instead of passing SVG in here, we pass an icon URL, and that is a public URL on my site, and I keep them all under logos. javascript.svg. Save that and see how it shows up. There's JavaScript, and we have TypeScript. I had React.js as React.js SVG. What were the others? Redux, Next.js, Gatsby. So Redux, Next.js, and Gatsby. I have the SVG logos for them all prepared. Gatsby. And this would be Redux, Next.js, and Gatsby. Gatsby. And Node.js and NPM. Okay, 2 more. That would be the Node.js logo, probably. And NPM. It's whether or not it makes sense to list that. Thank you for the hint in the chat and the promo code. Probably not going to make use of that though. And now we have the skills listed, but that doesn't look anywhere close to what we have over here, because there's some space between them and they're all in a row. So first of all, we want to make this whole section a flex container, which doesn't do anything. Still reloading. There we go. And now it puts all of them on the same line, so we have to tell it that it's okay to wrap things in it, which we can do by typing flex wrap. This is all Tailwind CSS again. I am doing this with Next.js and Tailwind, and we see here now we have them kind of how we want them, but there is no gap between them. And let me tell you, last time we learned about the gap property, that is available in Tailwind. The space between those on the horizontal is 8 pixels, and between the rows is 8 pixels as well. 4 pixels is a Tailwind unit, so a gap of 2. That was not what I wanted to do. Where'd you go? I miss you so. Next to the terminal. Come on. Okay, yeah, this is again my MacBook struggling. Terminal here. Come here. Where'd you go? What is happening? We're having some technical difficulties. Come on, it's not that hard. Come on, there. No. Can I see this? Thank you very much. Okay, so gap 2 would give me a gap between the items everywhere. And we see it here. The light gray makes it kind of difficult to see, but there is a gap here now. We don't have the heading yet where it says development. And what would that be? So I have a title of the page. That's the H1, H2, H3 is where it says IT consultant. That would make this an H4, and I have an H5 in this. Okay, I have an H5 that says development. Why is that going to break? Because the H5 just became a flex element as well. It's fair to say this is the development section, but then the tags will be the ones that need the styling on them. Flex, flex wrap, and gap 2. Nest you all in this div. Close the div, and I don't need any styles on this section for now. What do we need to style the title as? The title is text SM, medium, and the color is 37415. That is gray 700. So text SM, text gray 700, and font medium. In alphabetical order, that would be font medium, text gray 700, and text SM. To reload, and there is some space between them as well, because this is a heading and this is the content of 6 pixels, so less than between the items. That is fine. I could add a bottom margin to the heading, but I will, just because I can, use class name space y 1.5, which is 6 pixels in Tailwind units, which does the same thing. The header also needs to have some space to the elements in it, and that is 20 pixels. And I have the same here, I think, between this header and this. I have 20 pixels as well. So the div that everything is in has a space y of 5. Let's add one other section. Let's add the one that is styling. Sure, let's continue with styling. CSS, Sass, Tailwind CSS, and styled components. So we'd have to take this whole section. And I'm not going to do all of them. I just want to have more than one. So we have the style set up correctly. I can add the rest then is copy and paste. Styling was CSS and Sass and Tailwind CSS and nope, and styled components. Get rid of these. The logos are at css.svg and sass.svg. Tailwind CSS SVG, but the styled components one isn't an SVG. That is the emoji, the nail polish emoji, and that is a PNG under styled-components.png. It's fine if it's the same icon URL. This is used as an image source. It's barely noticeable, but there is a slight difference still, because between these blocks I only had 16 pixels. But now, because I have space y5 on the container that everything is in, I also have 20 pixels between the different sections. To avoid that, I need to put everything into a div, and I said, what was it, 16 pixels, so space y4. This section and that section. Close that. And that is enough. I don't have to add the other testing and linting, version control, CI/CD, data sources, prototyping, design, planning and documentation, SEO and marketing. I'm not gonna do that now because that would be just, I have the setup now. I can continue with this as it is, but how do I get this to the bottom of this now? First of all, it doesn't need to have the exact same layout. It makes sense to have it on this PDF because there it looks orderly, but on the web we might not expect it down there. We might want it to be up here. I will do the same as I have in the PDF just because, but I don't think I really would have to. It would be totally fine if the web version, because the line breaks are somewhere else anyways, if in the web version this was up here. But to show you how it would be possible, of course we need to go to the complete guide to Flexbox on CSS tricks, which you should probably have open on your browser at all times if you do anything with Flexbox. And it shows us what settings we could use to attach something to something else. So I want to make this one, the column on the left, a flex container. Let us begin with that. That is where the header begins. So you are, yeah, the one with the W72 that has this width attached to it. You are now also a flex container. Is that the right setting? It is not, because now everything is horizontal. So I want you to be a flex col because I want everything to be in a column. Does it look different from before? It doesn't. But now that everything here, the entire left side, is a flex container, and let's highlight that with pink BG. Pink 500, you are welcome for my choice of color. This entire column is now a flex container. And if we look at the settings, we have to kind of transpose those over here, because it is not really a... So where it is a row here, we have to imagine a column. What we want is we want to be able to attach one thing to the bottom or to the end of this container. We could do that on the parent itself, where we could say one of these, justify content, go space between, and it would work on the vertical the same way. So if we do justify between, I think is the Tailwind class, that would attach the skills, and we need to use a slightly less obnoxious shade of pink. That would attach the skills to the bottom. And this would say at the top, but this one is over here. And that is a bit too airy. We want to keep that up here. We have two ways we could do that. We could wrap this header and this aside, this unordered list, in another container. And say, yes, there is space between, but there would only be two direct immediate children in this column, which would be this combination of these two and then the skills. Or, and that is a bit nicer, instead of going justify between here, we can go to the column with the skills. And let's see what this is. There is an aligned self. No, wait. Is there a justify self? I thought it was possible to say, hey, you go to the end. Let us try BG yellow 500. There is no justify self. So on aligned self, it would work where we attach that to the end, but did I dream that justify self was a thing? Then we have to do the first one, where we combine them into one container. Flexbox. Did it hear me say justify self? How is that the first thing that it suggested? There is justify self in Flexbox and grid. Okay, so if we want to adjust it to the end, we would do justify self end. Does that work? Is that a thing? Justify self. And instead of saying justify the items in this container, take this one item and tell it how to justify. And no, I don't think that works. I don't think that works. To align an item based on the value of the justify self end. An individual grid item. Okay, so it works with grid items. It doesn't work with flex items. Seems like that is the case. That, well, is okay. Then we are going to do the first one. Then we have to take this back out again. And nope, that was one too many. The header. No, header. And this list here, those go into one container. That is, that's too bad. I thought justify self end was a thing. And you are a child now, and we go justify between here. That's what it was, right? Okay, now these two are exactly attached to each other, which isn't great because I want to have some space between them, but because so 20 pixels is what I want. And I had space Y4 in here. Let's zoom in a bit. I had space Y4 in here, which gave me 20 pixels between all of the items in this column. Because there is now only two children in here, I have to move this class down here. That is class name space Y4. Space Y4. I couldn't immediately go with gap because gap only exists on grid and flexbox, right? So now we have this space back. That is good. We can undo the pink. And with the pink gone, we are closer to what it was, to what it is on the PDF. To compare that again, I have a longer list of skills over here, of course, but they're attached to the bottom and they end where this ends. If I were to take this one out now, if I just went in here and removed this entire project. Let's take you out. Then this moves with the bottom of this content. Could I have a problem if I run out of content? What if this column becomes too large? Let's try. Let's take out a whole bunch of stuff. Let's take out the projects. Take out the public projects. Okay, that isn't a problem. It will be attached here, so maybe I still want the space y of 4 in here. Bring that back, space y of 4. It is unlikely that this will ever hit me, because I know how much text is on here. I know that the right column will be larger than the left column, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared. Now, can we leave it at that? I can now, offline, add more of the content here, and we'd call it a day. Then I have to add these 3 links here, and my CV will be done. But it's not fully ideal and usable yet. By the way, if you're watching this and you work for a company, I am available for freelancing if you're looking for support doing exactly this kind of thing, working a lot with Next.js, with Tailwind, with React, all that kind of stack. Now, this layout doesn't work well on small screens. It is okay on large displays, where it looks pretty much exactly like the PDF, but on small screens there's just no dice. That is absolutely terrible. And that is what we have to fix now. How did I do the layout in this in the first place? I have one big, and let's look at the full page first. Here, this is not ideal. The text is wider than 100% of the content. Something breaks out, and that is just terrible. So let's see if we make this BG red 400, just to see. Background color red is the best thing in CSS debugging. That is a flex container. I have flex on this outer one, which is where the 2 columns are in, and then the left column I had set to W72. If I made that smaller, like terribly small, it would look like this. Also not any better. Not better at all. So what we can do now, let me take out the, let me bring back the width to 72. BG red, keep the red. We could make this will work on a mobile screen if we only have so much width available. Make it a column. Now, instead of having them side by side, I have them top to bottom. And we see 2 things. For one, this could now take up the entire width of the page, but it doesn't, because I set this column to be W72 if we take that out. And I'm going to undo some of the styling that I did last time, because ideally we do something like this mobile first. We first look at how does it work on a small screen, and then as we get to larger and larger screens, then we can make changes, and then we can adjust where things go as they break. I want to, it was good to get started because we had this one-to-one reference to the document here. If we have a 4-page available, that's what we would do. But if we don't, how can we still have that? And that is something, frankly, that that a PDF couldn't do. I couldn't have this change neatly on a mobile phone. So if I were to make it available as a download on my website, and someone were to visit that on a mobile phone, they'd have to pinch and zoom, and they'd have to be, it'd be very annoying. So that is one of the benefits that I get from making this a website, making this a page on my website. Next problem I have is that this isn't left aligned, and that is the space X16 that I have here on this red container. Because what space X does is it adds a margin to all items except for the first one. So if I do space X5 and I have 4 items in a row, the first one doesn't get any margin, but then second, third, fourth, and fifth, they all get a margin of whatever size I just said. And different from the gap. Gap does something else. Gap doesn't work via a margin, which is okay. And now to have some separation between those, It is invisible here. We can't see it here, but if we go back to the document, we see there is a block here, a big block with the experience, a big block here, and a block here, and I have 40 pixels between them. Now the skills are not part of this, so I would have to add a bottom margin to those as well, or space Y of 10, which to all items but the first adds a top margin of 10. And let's undo the red. If we undo the red, and we see there is now some margin between these, there's some space between these, and that is good. That is better than what it was. Now if I take this and I increase it in size, it will always stay that way because there's nothing responsive about this yet. Is that okay? Well, it kind of messes with the line length. This becomes difficult to read. This doesn't look quite so nice when it's all in a row, and just in general, if we have the space available, we can make it, we can put it into 2 columns. Let's put it into 2 columns. To help me with that, I have a neat little feature in here. I added a debug mode to my site that I have to toggle on manually right now. I'm not sure if you can see it well, but now in the bottom right corner, there's this floating element here that tells me what breakpoint I am on. Right now I am on the XS breakpoint. If we go down further, this is no breakpoint. This is where nothing, this is where all styles generally apply. And on the no breakpoint version, having everything in one column, that works well. So I can keep it at the styles that I have. Now as I go larger, as I go wider, then things start to not be as pretty anymore. It's okay on the XS breakpoint, and if we go up a further still, this is all still the XS breakpoint, and I'm not fully in love with it. This started to become a bit too wide for my taste, but XS spans this entire width. It starts here and goes all the way up to here, SM. So here definitely we have to change something. At the SM breakpoint, I'm no longer okay with what I am seeing, and like this down here is okay, but this gray box is too wide now, and I want to see what I could do. So maybe this would become easier if I added the other links that we need here, and let me do that real quick, because those are not difficult elements anyways. 3 times. I have a link. I think I do Twitter first, then GitHub, then Twitch. Here I go HTTPS, no, not HTTPS, twitter.com/DonHabersack, and this would be an A tag, with an href of HTTPS, twitter.com/DonHabersack. Close the A tag and the icon here. We are going to do the same thing as we did with the tags. Give you classes h6, w6, and the source is logos twitter.svg. I will replace this with the Next.js image component later. Reload. I have Twitter on here now. And let me actually take this, add 2 of these. Then we went with GitHub. And GitHub, it's the same username on all, so this is an easy fix. GitHub and Twitch. I don't need to change most of the word. I can keep the twit in Twitter and twit. CH and twit CH. Get rid of you. You are the old addresses. I no longer need you. Save that. So I have this complete now. I could style the links. I haven't done that down here either. This is now gray text that you can see is a link when you hover over it. It's supposed to resemble the CV relatively closely. Now, what can I do to make this look better? Here on the XS breakpoint, says down here XS, I will live with what it is, but on a larger screen. Now, there's two ways I could see myself go here. I could either say, take this gray box and put it next to this header over here, like make this smaller again and put this on this side. But I think there is a nicer option, and that is to split the links into two lists, into two separate unordered lists. And I probably need to add some, I need to put you in a, okay, I do need to put it into an aside after all then. Decided against that because there was only a single element in here. The entire UL now goes into an aside. Some of these styles go on the aside. Like the background color doesn't go on each list, the padding doesn't go on each list, the rounded doesn't go on each list. Here, I think all of the styles go on here. Space Y2. Does it look any different? It shouldn't. Ideally, it doesn't look different. It looks a bit different because I need to add these to the other unordered list as well. I now have two separate lists. I have one list with these icons here, and then I have another second list with my profiles across the web. Now, if I have the space available, and I know that I have the space available on the SM breakpoint, I can make this whole gray box a flex container. So let's go SM flex. And this already makes better use of the space. Is it perfect? It definitely is not. So how do we get those to take up the same space? That would be a, first of all, we want to have a, let's make them both red so we see what's happening. BG red 500. No, I'm not going to keep those styles. And BG red 500, making something red is, as far as I know, the only way to debug something in CSS quickly. These are the two containers now. We see for one, this has a top margin. And why does it have that? We learned that this is what the space classes do. So on SM, we want to have no space. Space Y 0. I only want this margin on the other breakpoints. That for one. And I also want to have them be apart. Looking at the complete guide to Flexbox, I would like to have them on opposite sides and filling up the whole container. So there'd be space between, which in Tailwind classes is for the SM breakpoint, justify between. Half an hour, okay, that's good, that's good. Now this one moves to the right. Is that perfect? Still not. Because, oh, let me undo that first. No, let me not. Yes, let me know. Yes, no. No. I want them also to have the exact same width. I want those to look like columns. Wait a second, should I make this grid? I could make this grid, but because I only have two, grid might be faster, but let's see how it will work with Flexbox. If I give you both a width, can I give you both a width? Flex bases. Do I have a flex basis of half? Yeah, so if I give you this first UL, a flex, flex basis is not, and it's just spaces. That I don't think is what I want. Is it? Bases 1.5. 1.5. Okay, let's look at it in the inspector. Are you both the exact same width now, you two unordered lists? That one is 266 pixels and that one is 266 pixels. Okay, cool, then I will keep it. There is also, I also have, and now it wouldn't, no, it wouldn't. It's not obvious unless you scroll down the page a lot. if I put my cursor right to the left of the icons and I scroll down here, you can see it doesn't line up with this project over here. There's a gap between them. And why is there a gap? Well, because this is also a Flex container with a gap between the projects. Are you the same width? That seems off. It's one article here, 255, and one article here, 253, so almost. And I do the space thing here, so we have to replace that with a gap. Let's look at the, how's that, set a jump point here. How is red roulette style? So here I have two items. Space X16, is there a gap 16? That'd be better in the Flex container. Is there a gap 16? Probably should be, because I think they have the same size as well. There is a gap 16, so instead of going space X16, we go gap 16, and we do the same for the two list items over here in the aside. So on the SM, we go SM gap X16 or gap 16 doesn't make a difference here. What happened now? If we look at the projects first, we have 255 and 253. That might be a rounding error. I can live with that. Let's see what the sizes are up here. We see we now have a gap between them. And this one would line up with the red roulette down here. Yeah, at least looking at where the cursor goes when I scroll down, that seems right. And this one ends here. And that would mean that the text on the left project breaks there as well. Yeah, about there. We can't see because it's not justified, which is good. That almost went down the wrong pipe. This one is 234, and this one is 234, which is fine. It's not supposed to be exactly the same as down there with the projects, because there's some padding in here as well. But as long as these align, oh, can I keep? How can I get you to show me the lines? No, not this. Okay, too bad. But yeah, these align. That is good. Scrolling down the page, is there anything else that needs to be fixed? I could put the skills. I could put the skills in a. Oh, I forgot something about the skills. These skills are supposed to be larger than the ones. Let's do that first, because I don't think we need to do much about them. If we look at this, here with each project, a skill is 28 pixels high. Up here it's 32. It's not a lot, it's not a huge difference, but that also means that the icons are a tiny bit larger. On a small skill, I have an 18 by 18 pixel icon, and here I have 24 by 24. That would make them a bit more readable. I want them to stand out. CV skill. No, CV tag. Yeah, I could probably call it skill. I have two ways of doing that. I have a few ways of doing that. I could have a tag that's could have a component that's called CV tag, and another component that's called CV large tag. Did my image freeze? Sorry, I'm not sure what's happening on Twitch. I can't see myself move over there. I will have to... there I'm back. Sorry. That got out of sync. I could have a new component. I could have a CV tag and a CV small tag, or a CV large tag, and then depending on what size I want, I could use a different component entirely. That would mean I have to duplicate much of what happens inside of my component. It's not a lot. This is the entire component. I could easily duplicate that and have a CV large tag or a CV small tag as well. But why do that? I could also pass a property to them. I could say my CV tag can receive a property that is size, and size could be small or large. Or I could pass a Boolean value to it. That would be something like is small or is large. I have another component in here that's called the icon. And what I do there is I pass a size, and a size can either be medium or small. If it's not set, it is assumed to be medium. So I will, for the sake of consistency, will do the same. And because I will have more large tags than small tags, I will use large as the default. So this would be size small. Add that here and here and here and here, here and here. It doesn't. Well, yeah, I want it to be consistent. So allow me. And of course, that was the wrong place to do that. Perfect. I need to do that with all of the projects instead. Yeah, here. Size is small. What am I doing? I'll just do this one over here to see that it works. But we have to look at how we can make this work now, how we can make this happen. The CV tag will receive a new property that will be called size. And because I don't want to pass a size every single time, I will default it to large. In my types, I will say the size is optional because it has a default value up there, and it could be either small or it could be large. And what do I need to change? So the size of the icon will change. First thing I can do is if the size, which always has a value, if the size is large, I could go, and what was it? I set it to 24. So that'd be H6 W6, H6 W6. If it's not large and it's not fully, well, it kind of does cover it because it can only either be large or small. So by going with the ternary operator here and saying if you're large, you're this. If you're not large, you have to be small. That makes sense while it's only two possible values that it could be. The text size can that change? Is that also different? Yeah, the text size here is text XS and is text SM on the large version. So if we go in here, wrap this in the curlies and go with a template string, so that in here I can go size large. If you are large, then your text is SM. Otherwise, your text is XS, and close it here. Can't find variable large. Yeah, of course, I'm not comparing it to the variable large. I have to compare it to the string large. Surround word. The text is larger, the icon is larger than it is in these. And we see here I set the size too small, so these are all small. Here I forgot to set the size too small. I'll do that later, but the size has changed now. Is anything else different? Do I need to change the padding? This has a padding of 6 on the left and 5 at the top. And that's 6 and 4. Why is it 6 and 4? What is the padding here? So I have padding 1. I said last time the padding is 1.5 to 6 pixels all around, and that is fair. If we inspect it and we see how large they are, I think it's fine to keep them at that. So udiv, you are 32. Okay, so now the smaller one is 32 pixels. Okay, it doesn't have to be 100% identical. If that's more readable on the web, then let us do that. And 36, so it's the 4 pixels that we added here that it is larger. Cool, but that means that on the smallest breakpoint, it still kind of works with that. I can undo the red. No longer need the red background color. Oh, and I have another red. Get rid of view as well. That kind of looks okay, right? If you visit this on a small screen on a smartphone, this is what you'd see. That is perfect. That is fine. That is fine. Now, going with mobile first, we have to increase this in width now and see how long it is going to be fine. Still on the smallest breakpoint, this one down here, that will change. If we go SM, still kind of okay. And then at MD. At MD, we are at MD here. This is now a bit too far apart. I could maybe from the beginning have put this address on one single line in the first place. Might do that, but what can I do to fix this now? So skills, there will be more skills. And they won't all have the same height. If I put those in a flex container, there would be gaps between them. Unless I specified exactly where the break was. If I did the same thing as I am doing for this gray box up there, then I could put the skills next to each other here. And I could have done that earlier also. That might be necessary, because I don't think this is enough space to put in 2 columns yet. Let's try that. If we say you are a flex col, and now I want to put you in a flex row, I would go MD flex row. And I would get this, which isn't great. I'd also have to say that this no longer is a flex column. That was the aside, so I would go MD. Instead of flex, you go to flex column. Why are you still so wide though? Ah, okay. This was told to not shrink. I told you with shrink 0, you take as much space as you need. And for these skills to all be in one row, well, that's just how much it needs. Instead, I could go, instead of telling you don't shrink, because I think that is outdated now. Instead of going shrink 0, let's undo the shrink. And this is what we'd get. Is that better? Well, for one, it is okay as a column. That I am okay with. What can I do to fix everything that's wrong with it? So there's no space between them, for one. There is no gap here, and we see this space Y. That still applies. That is not great. So instead of space Y, let's use gap. If it's a flex container, we can use gap, and that's much easier. Now, if I went down in size, I'd have this on the iPhone SE. Okay, something doesn't work quite well here. I'd have this on the XS breakpoint. That would be okay. And then I would have the SM breakpoint here. Still looks okay. And then when we go to the medium breakpoint, we have it in 2 columns. 2 things that bother me. My name is on separate lines, and I don't like that. Because it doesn't work. So when it breaks to this tiny, that's not ideal. So I could go, what's the white space? The dash, where the dash goes in the white space is always a bit annoying. So no wrap. White space, no wrap, please. Is white space, no wrap. If there is space, never break this up into 2 lines. That will always be on the same line. White space, no wrap. Now my name's always on 1 line. That is good. Still not enough space. because I don't want you to shrink. Can I tell just this container to not shrink? Can I tell the aside that you are not supposed to shrink? That would be shrink 0. How about you don't shrink? That didn't do anything, did it? Why does it shrink? How can I tell you that it's okay to shrink? So I'm thinking the entire column needs to go shrink. But that's what I had in the beginning. Shrink 0. If this column's not supposed to shrink at all, then I'm back to this problem. Which it's not okay. That is not okay. So shrink 0 isn't it. Do I want to go with a grid layout here? Because I think that might be the answer. And sure, why not? Because the difference will have to go to grid eventually anyways, I believe. So instead of going grid and grid call, flex and flex call, we are going to go grid. Display grid. Display. So I don't have to undo flex if on MD I decided instead of a flex container, you're now a grid container. I can do that because in the background it replaces display flex with display grid. There it is, display grid. Oh, sorry. And what do we get from that? We get everything in a grid, but we haven't told it that please do multiple columns. That would be grid template columns, grid calls 2. On MD, we want grid calls 2, please. These will be equal with columns, which is not perfect. But I could also tell it that I want it to be a 3-column layout. And this is where we go back here. Because if I bring up that, everything is neatly organized into columns. I use a 6-column highlight here, but really it's 3 because nothing ends on one of these columns. I want the left column to take up 1 of 3 and then the other 2 to take up 2 of 3. So we'd go grid calls 3. That would give us a 3-column layout. That doesn't work yet. Maybe we have to use a different split. That would give me 3 columns. 1 column is the first child, then the second child, and the third column is empty. What I can do is I can go in here and I can tell this, hey, you can span 2 of these columns now, with the third one being unused right now. Grid, column, start, and end. So the easiest would be going in here where it says profile and telling it, hey, on MD, on the medium breakpoint, it's cool if you want to span 2 columns. Just from wherever you start, take up that column and take up another column. That is better. Where does MD start? MD starts exactly here. This doesn't work with a 3-column layout yet, but what if I had, let's say, 5 columns, and I told this first one you can take 2, and the other can take 3. So I go call span 3 on this one, and for the other one on MD, no, 1 layer up still. Which one is it? This one. MD, you can... Will it call span? Call span 2. That would mean that I need a total of 5 columns. Nothing happened. Something happened. So there is an invisible grid behind this now that is made up of 5 columns. This first one over here, this left column takes up 2 of those, and this one takes up 3 of those, giving me 5 total. And now I have enough space for this block over here. And where it jumps to now, okay, now we get to a lot of stuff. We need to start at the smallest breakpoint. We need to go all the way down here. Well, maybe not all the way down here. These are 2 separate lists. I have a list that spans this and a list that spans this. And I want to have some space between them because at one breakpoint I want to put them next to each other. I want there to be space between them, and I did that with space Y before. But then I had to undo the space Y by going, hey, on the SM breakpoint, forget about the space Y again. And I had to add a gap x16 over here. I can do all of this with gap. If I do gap 2 here, and then where it is on the small breakpoint, let's do gap 16. So when I put you next to each other, the gap will be 16. If I don't put you next to each other, the gap will be 2. That doesn't work. Why does that not work? It does not work because it's not a flex container yet. This gap only works with flexbox and grid. And if we look at the classes that I add here, I only have a background color, padding, and rounded on this container. It only becomes a flex container on the SM breakpoint. So I have to make you a flex container from the start. But I have to put you in a column. So flex col. And then on the small breakpoint, I have to put you in a row. So this is switching layouts a bunch. This first goes from a flex column layout to a flex row layout back to a flex column layout. Here I have a gap of 2. Then I have you next to each other and a gap of 16. And then when I have you on top of each other again, the gap is still 16. So here I go on MD. When you're a column layout again, the gap goes back down to 2. How about that? There we go. This one down here, also fine. Zoom out a bit. Now, okay, we zoomed out a bit. This is the MD breakpoint. If we go larger, this is still MD. See that in the bottom right here. And this is LG. Here is where I can make another adjustment to the layout. And I think it no longer needs to be a 5-column layout. Now I can go down to 3 columns, which means that on LG, I go grid calls 3. If I keep it at that, what does it give me? Something terrible. Because now this first one spans 2 of 3 columns. And we see this, if this is 1 column, 2 columns, this will be the 3rd column. On the LG breakpoint, I want you to call span just 1. And then the other one is currently set to span 3, because when I have 5 columns, you can have 3. Now on the LG breakpoint, you can no longer have 3. It now takes up the entire width, right? Call span 2. On the large breakpoint, you can only have 2. And there we go. That I still have one more thing that I want to fix with this. So if we take this and we start from a small breakpoint, we start from here, it doesn't look, this gray box doesn't look ideal. I'm not a huge fan of that. I could try to move it over first, or I could live with it, because if you look at this on a phone, not sure, maybe. Then on the SM breakpoint, we go to a 2-column layout here. On MD, we change to grid. This is a 5-column grid. You take 2, you take 3. And then on LG, we are at the final layout. And we see this is also very close to what it is in my document. Don't have all of that in the PDF, but I am okay with that. Let's make one more change to the layout. Maybe. I'm not sure. Okay. So what I was thinking is that if you're looking at this on a phone, I want to give you the most relevant information as quickly as possible, above the fold, as they say. And I'm thinking that this information here doesn't work the way I want it to. This information up here is not the most interesting, but considering, like, I will accept it, because it is also like a quick profile. Like, this is where you can get more if you just want to see my name and how you can reach me. I will have to keep that, but do I maybe want to begin with the profile, experience, projects, writing, and then list the skills? What if the skills came last? And I'm afraid of attempting that, because this will mean a lot of rejiggering over here, but I hope it'll be worth it. So ideally, this skills section would be at the end of the page, and then it would only appear on the left when we go to the 2-column layout. And I think I can do that with grid. How, though? How do I do that with grid? That would mean I can't... Wait a second. No, I could do that with Flex. So in Flexbox, there is an order I can put things in. I will have... So either I go Flexbox and order, or I go grid and I place it in a specific grid cell. I think because it is, at this point, a one-dimensional layout, having this in grid, in Flexbox, sorry, having this in Flexbox would make more sense. And I start out with a flex column layout. I will have to, and now I understand the criticism that some people have with Tailwind, because once you have everything set up there, it becomes a bit harder to see where to make changes, but we can make it work. We can do that by going. So these can't be in the same container. If I go here and I turn this red, this red container contains all of those now, and not this. I couldn't take the skills and move them down now beyond the content section here. I have to move it out of this red container. And the red container then is, right now, is a div. That would mean that the skills have to be outside of the div. Div class name BG. No, let's make you green because I am mean. Okay, that's not terrible. So we split this up. We have this, we have that, and then on the same level, I hope, on the same depth as the skills, I have the content BG yellow 400. Go yellow. There we go. Now in the markup, green comes first, but in the order I want it to come last. Like on the page I want it to appear last. And let's look at order on Tailwind in the Tailwind documentation. Yeah, if I hurry up, I can get to the... Oh, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate that very much. That is, it's still early streaming days for me, so every time someone follows, I get very excited. So order last is a thing. Nice. So I can... What is order last? Okay, order last is a very large order. I could say order 3, So if I go order 3, do I have to put an order on everything? Where did it go? I put an order of 3 on it, and now it's down here. In the markup, I haven't moved it. It's still in the HTML where I put it first, but now it's over here. And I can go order last, because they put that there for a reason. Now what happens though? Because if I increase this, so this isn't ideal, as was to be expected. So when I go to this is a grid layout now, right? If we are on the MD breakpoint, this turns into a grid layout. I don't think it's difficult. No, beautiful. Oh god, if that works, that'd be fantastic. And I'm telling it here, you are a 5 column layout. How many rows are you? By default, it'd probably be 1 row and then whatever auto. Can I go grid rows? Grid auto rows. So I'm going to assume that if there's grid columns 5, there would also be grid rows 2. MD grid rows 2. Kind of thinking in tables right now. So you are a thing. You are a thing. So this is 1 column. This is 2 out of 5 columns. This is 3 out of 5 columns. And then down here, this is nothing. Nothing. If we want to go to the green container and order, can I undo the order? Does the order still apply in a grid? The order still applies in a grid. So order, is it something like order auto? Order none is what I want. So on the MD breakpoint, we go order none. Might not have to go order none. Yeah, no, shouldn't have gone order none. What's happening? What is happening? Instead. Okay, so what I'm thinking is I now no longer have a 2 column grid. I have a 2 column and 2 rows grid. Well, 5 columns and 2 rows to be exact. And this is why this is so tiny. This is now 1 out of 5 columns. I want you on the MD breakpoint to call span. Let's say, just so we see what happens, I want you to span 3 columns. It would span 3 columns. It's okay if you span 2 columns. And the height of each column is now the height that a column is here. That is not ideal. If I now told the yellow section, I want you to span 2 columns and, well, 3 columns here. And on MD, starting on MD, I want you to row span 2. Oh god. Beautiful. That is beautiful. So now I have a column on the left that has this information and that information. And then over here I have this column that spans these. If I now manage to attach this to the bottom here, then that would be exactly what I had in mind. Looking at it again from the largest, from the smallest breakpoint, I have them in the order red, yellow, green. And then increasing it in width, I have red here, yellow here, green down here. How can you only take up the space that you need? Is there a grow shrink? Is there something like a grow shrink? Grid? Is there a grid basis? Grid shrink? There's no grid shrink. There's flex shrink. Complete guide to grid. That is the second page that should always be up on your browser when you're doing layout stuff. What could we do? What could we do? I kind of want you to span the stuff, but I also want you to only take up as much space as you need. How can I tell you? Not a fraction, not a fraction. Okay. How do I tell you to justify self? Would that apply to the item or to the row? If I did justify self end, and that be justify self end on the green? Yeah, on the green. If we go, and I know this looks broken, we'll fix that in a second. If I tell you to, on the MD breakpoint, to justify self end, what do? That isn't it. I could make this whole thing another flex container and adjust it at the end, but no. That is not it at all. How do I now give you a size? Is there a span? Okay. No. Grid template rows, grid template columns, auto rows, grid auto rows. So if we add more rows of implicitly created grid rows, is that what I want? Is that what I want if I don't specify how many rows there are supposed to be? If I don't tell it that, then what does it do? And does it do something? Auto rows auto. Yes, that is a good thing. Which one? Auto rows auto. Auto rows auto. On MD, auto rows auto. I think that's what I was looking for. It's not doing it. Why is it not doing it? What else did I tell it? Let's try the different values for the auto row. Not mon. Let's do min. It's not doing it. What is it set to? So this whole container. Grid calls 5. Why does it not? Auto rows. That has hit me every single time. I keep messing up the singular and plural. Not auto row auto. Auto rows auto. MD auto rows auto. What if instead of auto we go min content? It's not doing it. How can I tell a grid item to only be as tall as it needs to? Right now it's putting them all on the same. On MD, your grid. Right, so it's splitting them in the middle probably. Could I tell either this one here or this one, the red or the green one? If there is more space available than you need, you take it. Is there something like a flex grow for grid? There is no grid grow. What else do we have in the documentation? What's grid autoflow? Nope. that is not, I don't want the placement. Grid rows, okay, grid rows, right, okay. Grid rows puts a template on them, and that is split it equally. But I took that out. There's calls on there, there's no rows on there. How can I make you auto height? What is, no, that wasn't it. Auto rows FR, auto rows min. So I am going to abandon this in a second, because me struggling with the documentation, that doesn't make for good. No, that is the wrong layout on the MD. Okay, so abandon ship, that is fine for now. I will find probably a worse solution later. We will have to move because I'm looking at the time. I didn't have much more budgeted for the stream today. And what else? Red, green. Take the color out before we leave. I can live with this for now. I will do something with this offline. But I have one more. It's terrible. It won't be terrible when I put all the skills in there. Before I leave, I want to look at the dark mode for this, because this stream is titled Layout and Dark Mode. This is nothing. This is terrible. So this switches with a media query, and all of the colors are gone now. All the text is completely unreadable. We can go to where it says my name. That is in here. I know that it's in here. There it says my name. And that is text gray 900. In dark mode, I want to go text gray. Let's do 100. Or let's do 50, because this will be the brightest text up here. And where it says what roles I do, instead of going text gray 500, we go dark text gray. And what would work? I want it to be a lighter, but not annoyingly so. How's 400? Okay-ish. That block over here is readable, so we will look at that later. We have the CV header. Yeah, that is my portfolio site. This is at dumbhabazak.com. Holds all my projects, and all my writing, all my videos are listed on there as well. Probably linked in my profile here somewhere. Where you all come from? How are there 16 people watching this? What did I miss? Hi, thanks. I appreciate you being here. I don't know how that happened, but now I am kind of freaking out. I'm kind of freaking out. Okay, so on dark, I have text blue. Let's do 300. And the text, that looks bad. That doesn't look good at all. I might change the color to something else. Let's make this readable first. On dark, the text goes text gray 200. Wow, now I can feel my heart going, because there's people watching now. Yeah, this is proper exciting. This is proper panic. I also have a, I'm all nervous now. I have a, what's that called? A CV item. That's called a CV item. And in dark mode, the title will be text gray 50. The text of the URL, the secondary information that I have here, will be dark text gray 400. And you down here will be text gray 200 as well. I like to keep the shades relatively close. The headings here, they look atrocious. So instead of going 300, was 600 all that bad? 600 was a bit, yeah, no, that was too dark. Let's go 400. Let's go 500, and let's keep going. The skills here, those will be difficult. So those will be difficult if I go to the CV tag. And usually I like to just flip the color. If I am at text gray 100, I go to 800, so they add up to 900 and it's mirrored in the middle exactly. But if I do that here and I go BG gray 800, I stream some of my own company stuff. I do not stream client work. But if I'm working on some of my projects that I do for myself, then I will. Client stuff, of course, is always confidential. And here the text is text gray 600, and in dark mode we go dark text gray 300. That is okay, but you can see some of the icons don't work well on this at all. JavaScript, you can see React is fine, but the Redux, the Next.js, those are not made for dark mode. Some of them have dark mode versions. I know that Next.js, they have a white version, or Twitter in their branding guidelines, they let us use their icon in their Twitter blue or in, I think, just pure black and pure white is what they allow. But some of these don't work in dark mode. This is better than not having anything. This is better than having this be... what else could I do? Maybe there's something else I can do. Maybe instead of flipping the color, I have to... Let's undo this. And instead of flipping the color, let's see if we went down just a bit. So this is still too bright. I want them to catch attention, but not that much. If we go to 300, no, that's not enough. 400. Yeah, and then the text will become, no, this looks like an inactive button. 5. No, well, this is where it's starting to look okay, but I do run into the same problem with the icons. They are even less visible now. Like Redux, you can't make out the logo here at all. So I think flipping it was the right call. Could I go darker? If I go 900, it will disappear because 900 is the background color. If I go black, that would also work, but not really. Would that help with the readability of the icons? Don't think so. Next.js disappears completely. So let's go gray 800, and let's keep flipping the colors. On dark, we go text gray 300 here. Is it perfect? No, it isn't. Is it usable? Kind of. I need to do something about the icons here because there is a logo here that is unreadable. The Smashing Magazine logo probably is not supposed to look like that. It's probably supposed to be a white line in here that I'd have to add. And this block. Let's do this block also. And then I think that'll be the end. What is the... Okay, that's all good. That seems to be all good. That was the aside here. And we have to go from BG gray 100. If we want to... I'm gonna go flip it. Because it's the same background color as I had on these tags. So we go BG gray... Not GB, we go BG... What do I keep doing? BG gray. This is what I do when I get flustered. 800. 800. I'm not at that point here, but 800. Yeah, it was 800. And then the text I have to flip on each of these individually. That is why did I do that for? Text grade 200 here, and the icon. The icon I can flip, the logo I can't flip because the icons are imported differently. I think, I hope. Dark text gray 300. this is frozen. It says live in the bottom there. I'm not sure if I'm still live. So this works well for this. Why do I have to flip the text on everything though? That shouldn't be necessary. I want to do that in one place. I want to do that on the full side. And that would mean that the text gray 700 goes here. And in dark mode, we go text gray 200. Does that work? It does, but we can't see it because I still have text gray 700 hard-coded on these. What was I thinking? Okay, so now I need to go in here and delete all of these. Text gray 700, delete that. And because I don't style those are links, but I don't style them as links. I could make them blue now. They kind of compete with the blue in the heading here. Not going to do that. Not going to do that yet anyways. And text sm and delete this as well. The icons I can't flip all at once because they don't have the exact same shade of gray. So you are going to be dark text gray 300 and dark text gray 300 here. Dark text gray 300. Yeah, gray 300. What do we have? That is good enough. I still remember there's one thing that I messed up here, which is the skills section on the large layout. And that is, let's go to skills. On MD, we tell it to span 2 columns, and on LG, I want it to only span 1 column. Call span 1. So, is this exactly what I wanted? It is not. Can I live with it? Yes, I can, because I gave myself 90 minutes to make this happen, and we're almost at it. We're at 88 minutes now. Looking at it again in responsive mode. Without any breakpoints, I have this summary up here. I have profile, experience, all the stuff, all the skills. I need to make sure those are small as well. Then writing, then the skills. Oh, I need to flip these headings as well. Those were the H5s. On dark, you go to text gray 200, and so do you. Dark text gray 200. There, cool. Then as we go wider, everything's still the same. I think no, this doesn't work. See, there's still public projects in here, and those are messy. Public projects. I can't have you be next to each other yet. So this flex call and put 20 pixels between you. How much space is there between entries here? Between this and this, there's 24 pixels. So you have a gap of 6. These projects are in a column layout, and then only as we get to, I think on SM. Where does SM start? Yeah, on SM I could put them side by side. So on SM you are flex, and SM gap would then be, I think, 10 instead. Oh, it is flex already. I need to set it to flex row. nothing is updating on my dashboard here, so I'm not sure if I'm even live still. That is now on the XS breakpoint. We have them on top of each other. Then we go side by side. And then as we go to the medium breakpoint, we have this column layout, and on the large breakpoint and up, still column layout. This I need to fill up anyways. I want to see what it looks like when I have all the skills that I wanted in there. And I need to find out how to make these icons, these logos, switch to something that's readable here and here as well, but in dark mode and in light mode. Nope, not you. Wanted you. Dark mode and in light mode. This looks fine. Okay, the rest will be manual work where I make sure these are all the right size and these are added. I'll do that after the stream, but also after lunch, because it's about lunchtime where I'm at right now. I don't know what happened today. I appreciate you all being here, but I don't know what I did to make that happen. The recording of this will be up on YouTube tomorrow. Thank you very much for checking this out. This gave me a bit of a pulse right in the middle there. I stream twice a week. I stream Tuesdays and Thursdays, same time, 10 a.m. Central European now Standard Time. If you want to follow, you'll get a notification when I go live. Next time, I assume this will be done, and I will publish that soon. I want to go back to the videos page that I have here, which is hooked up to the YouTube API, and and you see the video where we started with this page that we just looked at. I want to show the tags. I want to show how long the video was ideally, and merge this with more information that we can get from the YouTube API. I think that'd be the next topic. Maybe put those on a grid as well, because there's a lot of empty space up here that I could use to show more videos. If you want to join me for that, I would super appreciate that. Other than that, thank you again very much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.